You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side.
God bless America. Welcome to The Ranch, everybody, the podcast that explores the people and happenings of Dry Creek Ranch, Eagle, and the greater Boise area. Quick restaurant shout out, Boise Noodle House. If you like Thai food, I could not recommend Boise Noodle House enough. I'm a huge fan of Thai food and Chinese and sushi as well, but Thai food, my wife and I always get it, and at least we always got it before we moved to the Boise area. And the problem is there aren't that many places that we found that have really, kind of stood up to the standard that we look for. I can tell you without a doubt, we have eaten so much Boise Noodle House. It is fantastic. I'll put the contact info below. I love the red curry chicken. I love the pad thai. The drunken noodles were fantastic. I got those recently. Totally reasonable price. My wife and I literally get like 2 or 3 meals out of it for about $60. It's fantastic. So try it again. I'll put the information up here. Again, I can't recommend it enough. If you actually want to eat at the restaurant as well, instead of going out, you can tell that the people put a ton of effort into it. My friends and I go and sit at the bar. We just grab a table. And again, I'm a big fan. So Boise Noodle House, go check it out. It's on Chinden. There's the information for you. My guest today is the Dry Creek Ranch farmer. He's a wonderful guy. I really enjoyed talking to him. We just get down to a frequency where he knows media and he knows philosophies and he knows history, and we just go back and forth talking about the different things that we're interested in. We did talk a little bit about farming and growing things. We do have some cooking episodes that we've been talking about that we're going to bring forward in the spring when he starts putting out produce. But again, I just really like this guy. I love that he's part of our community, and I love that I actually get to talk to him. But without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Farmer Dan Meyer.
We're just trying to plan a party. God bless it. Dan, good to see you again, bud.
So glad to be here.
Man, what a wild time. So in general, do you still do Christmases with your family? Because you're from Boise, right?
I am, yeah. And I do, me and my wife's family, so my family. My dad's still here. My mom passed away a few years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But my dad's still here. My sister just moved here from Phoenix, so that'll be great. She's super into Christmas, so yeah.
Is she into decorating or just the holiday?
Oh yeah, and we get from my mom, and I love Christmas. It's just the aesthetics of it, and like everything. I can still get into that mind space a couple days of the year. As you get to adult, it's like this is kind of like regular days, and and getting that magic back can be kind of tough. But put on the right movie or like put on the right like song from that you listened to back in the day as a kid, and you can get right back to it. I think.
Yeah, there's all right. Religion in general, I think, is a lot more meaningful when things are really rough. Right, like in the dark ages and stuff, like, or even 100 or 200 years ago, like infant mortality was infinitely higher than it is now, and so the value of religion was really a lot more significant, I think, to people. But same thing with Christmas. So there was this instance where in World War. It was World War I or World War II?
I think it's one.
One. Yeah, exactly. So there were German soldiers and American soldiers. Christmas rolls around, and they literally this trench warfare. Like they're like the foxholes that they throw up the white flag, whatever they had, and they go and exchange things with. They actually. So again, the two sides came and met in the middle without arms. Shook each other's hand, exchanged gifts, and went back into their trenches.
Yeah.
And the people in command at the time realized they're like, dude, we got to move these guys out because they won't fight each other ever again. So they had to switch out the people in the trenches for people that would actually try to kill one another because they're like, it's not going to work. I mean, imagine being in a situation like that where it's like it's Christmas and then you find the person who you've been trying to kill just comes up and like gives you a cookie or something.
Yeah, man, I've been thinking a lot about World War One. Netflix just had a new movie come out called
it did?
All Quiet on the Western Front, and it just follows a young guy who's it's from a German guy that is super like gung-ho and excited to go, and it's like towards the end of the war where most of this takes place, and it's just just brutal reality immediately. And like that was the first war that was like industrial level killing, and people, they just didn't know, like this was completely new, and just trying to like get and what were they fighting for? That was kind of I think really the first time we're like, why are we mowing down an entire generation of young kids for what? Like that nobody understands.
Plus, the political nuances of World War I were impossible to disentangle, right?
Really?
Because one of the, I mean, first off, that was the end of Prussia. That's unfortunate. No more. But you had all political alliances that drew allies against allies, because they're like, okay, you're allied with these two people and they're fighting, so both of them are calling for you to join their side. And so you had people that were fighting, not just like, why are we fighting, but like, why are we fighting them? You know, like they're supposed to be at least loosely our ally, and now all of a sudden we're going up against them. And it was just this mass entanglement where there was no right answer.
Yeah. And so just like, the fake story, I don't know how true the whole thing is. Like there was a ceasefire, and there was like a Christmas Day ceasefire that was organic. It just happened on the battlefield. But I think the story was like somebody put like a Christmas tree in the middle. And then people stopped it. And then they met and escaped. But I mean, and then that's when you realize like, oh, this is just another human on the other side, and it's these weird people in power that are the ones like moving us around a chessboard of their making, you know.
And I was reading what was the book, I can't remember, but it was about World War II, and there was an instance where there was a Russian soldier and a soldier. They were in conflict, okay, but it was like you're in snow and mud and like just the shit, right? So these two soldiers land next to each other, and they, for a couple minutes, thought they were on the same side. And so they're standing there like behind this hill, like, oh my gosh, do you seem like, oh no. And then they realize, and there was this recorded part of this book where this guy was recounting what happened. He was like, and then we realized, we're like, oh, you're the bad. And then it's like, you go from thinking that you have like, comrade by your side to realizing like, oh my God, he's going to kill me right now if I don't kill him first. What a horrible, we were talking about Christmas a minute ago. How'd this go so dark?
Yeah, no, but I think it's an interesting conversation to have, especially in today's, like, maybe we can relate it to like today's political climate, and like we do seem to be in like political trench warfare right now. Like maybe get out of the foxhole for a minute and like, talk to people on quote unquote the other side as humans for a minute. I don't know. I very much agree with you. But I think the things that are unifying us, like Christmas, are actually dwindling in number. So, for instance, if you're like, look, in Christmas spirit, let's say I'm a crazy liberal, like crazy, and you, Dan, are the crazy Republican conservative. And I'm like, you know what? I think we should talk, Dan. And you come to me and you're like, you know what? You're right, Matt. In the spirit of Christmas, we should talk. And I'm like, you can't say Christmas. You can't say Christmas. You mean
how dare you? Right. But like, I think we're losing. I mean, the irony is like, even if we want to say in the spirit of Christmas, we should communicate and like see each other as humans and really care for each other. I think the things that are calling us to action in that regard are actually much, much fewer, because you can't even agree on a holiday. Yeah. You can't agree on a sentiment. You can't, it's getting so weird. For instance, Halloween just came and went, right? Love Halloween. And it's such a great time, especially for school age kids, to just have fun, and they're silly, and parents, somebody told me a long time ago and didn't understand at the time. They're like, Halloween is really for parents. Halloween isn't for kids. You're like, dude, I like the candy. My parents aren't eating my candy. But, obviously as you get older and then you have kids and you start dressing them up, and you're sending pictures of your kids to everyone. Right, yeah. And like you're like going out to get a coffee and showing the person at the coffee shop your kid.
Yeah.
Like
I did that.
Yeah, 1,000%, right? You love doing that. I mean, like it's so clear that it's like, oh well, there are traditions that we have that are seemingly one thing, but they're really for something else, right? But even with Halloween now, it's being infiltrated by different ideologies, right? Like when people ask why you moved from California, this is always like, I just have an abundance of stories. But one thing recently was Halloween in the school district we were part of. The school district put out this notice saying you can't dress up as somebody from a different culture or ethnicity, whatever. You can't dress up as a character that is. So like I couldn't dress up as an Indian, and I couldn't dress up as like a famous Indian character, right? Like Pocahontas. They probably wouldn't have a problem with the fact that Pocahontas is a woman and I'm a dude, but they would take issue with the fact that it's an Indian and I'm Mexican. Anyway, so, and you know, all these things, it's like, well, how are we supposed to work this out? Right? Like my son, when he was 4 or 5, he saw Moana, the Disney film, for the first time. And the first time he was like, kind of excited about it, but like kind of scared because, you know, Taka, the lava monster, was terrifying for a 5-year-old. But then he got really into it and he loved Moana and he wanted everything Moana because Moana is this incredible character, this incredible heroine. I mean, like I still cry when I see the movie. It's beautiful. And especially the character of Maui, who's this scoundrelly, self-preserving, you know, almost like brat, you know, because he has these godly powers. And of course, he's not willing to sacrifice anything, you know, in the pursuit of his own greatness. But when it comes down to someone else, he's like willing to throw away his life. I loved that my son loved it. But he had like a Maui birthday party, Moana birthday party. He ran around school saying like, am I as brave and as awesome as Moana? Right. And now it's like, oh, he couldn't do that by their standards. Yeah. You know, here we are 5 years later. He's 10. He wouldn't be allowed to dress up as Moana or Maui. And it's like, what? Like, why?
Yeah.
Not your thing.
I do. It's definitely a nuanced conversation, but in general,
I don't think it's that nuanced. I don't think it's that.
I mean, from it talking to somebody on the left who would say, like, yeah, cultural appropriation bad. I think the nuance is like, actually, there's a lot of cultural appropriation that's about love and celebrating and being like, I think one of the things that makes America unique and pretty special as a country globally is because we're such a melting pot, all the appropriation that has happened in this country. I think that's great. So, like, I think that's what I mean by the nuance is like, I'd really just implore people who do think that way to be like, man, you know, let the kids celebrate, right? You know, something they really love,
right?
And don't be like, oh, that's off limits. Because then what happens? Then
we can never have taco parties again unless you have the requisite Mexican guy. No taco party for you, Dan.
Exactly. I got to call you if I ever do that.
Yeah, right. I went to our friend had us over last night for dinner, and she made ramen, right? So she spent all this time she had all these different additives and, you know, braised and blanched things, and, you know, had all these different noodles and stuff, and, you know, different sauces and sesame seed oil. She really went all out. It took her like hours to put all this stuff together. And I was like, how great is this that we, you know, live here and we can be eating Vietnamese food? I was like, because I'll tell you what, and we made a joke about cultural appropriation. I said, but I'll tell you what, you go to Vietnam, they're not eating Outback steak. They're not putting down like burgers. And how cool is it that, you know, you go downtown Boise? I love Faux Nueva. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. And then you go around the corner, you get St. Lawrence's Gridiron.
Yeah.
They have great stuff there. And just Matador, within one block, you have all of this different food that's just, God bless it, man. Like, it's wonderful. Yeah. You know, and to think that it's like, well, you need at least one Mexican dude working out front at the Matador or else you're bad, right? Or like the owner has to be Hispanic. It's like, why, man? Yeah. I can't get behind it. I like people too much.
Right. Yeah. As individuals,
Very much so. So look, your plant friends, they're donezo for the season.
They are. And just for an awesome transition here, I did want to say, you were talking about like the things that connect us and like we're losing maybe Christmas and stuff, but man, the one thing I found that can really connect people is food.
Yeah.
And the love of it, or if you're getting into like I started way back at this will take you back a little bit. Like my first years of farming were right around the Occupy time.
Oh, Occupy, no kidding.
Yeah, and I remember Boise had a Occupy thing. They had a little tent city that They popped up, and I was going in and out of it, and like it's really not my thing organized. Like I'm not a marcher. Like I went to one of the marches and just kind of stood there in my hands in my sweat shirt pockets the whole time.
God, it's cold, guys. What are we doing here?
I don't know. Yeah, so it wasn't my thing. But they had because the Tea Party was the same thing. They had a meet. Occupy Boise had a meeting with Tea Party folks.
Do you remember those people? The Tea Partiers?
I do. And they had a meeting, and a lot of the agreement and stuff was on like big ag and like Monsanto stuff, right? Very much on the same page. And then also that they kind of found that they were actually on agreement on quite a few more things than what they thought. It was like 80% of like agreements. Of course, they were like looking for the agreements at this meeting, but they found a lot of things, and a big one of them is food and things, and food sovereignty, food, all stuff like that. So, that kind of stuff gives me hope. Is
that
really
you can
what I'm
find
trying to
common
say.
ground,
and then and then it really can bring people together.
I think. I think just like what you said, if you're looking for things you agree on, I think you find common ground with the vast majority of people, but they have to be looking for it too. Everyone cares, right? For instance, one girl one of my students, she had an issue with I can't remember who the justice was, Supreme Court justice that recently got elected, a female. Do you remember her name? It was like 2 years ago or something.
Amy Barrett.
Yeah, there we go. So the student was saying, well, obviously this woman is not pro-woman. She doesn't like women. I was like, why is that? And she said, well, because she's pro-life. I'm like, well, doesn't that mean she's pro-like baby girls? Like which women then? Like the women that are pregnant or not? And again, it's a very touchy subject, but I think people value individuals. They just... The nuances come from like, okay, who should we value more? When should we value them more? And who should we protect more? And you get into the weeds with this, and then all of a sudden, no one cares about the core idea, which is we value people, right? And they go to this like buzzword of like pro-life, pro-choice, this and the other, and
then you make your identity about that,
right?
And then all you do is talk past each other. That's what I. That's what I've observed.
Right.
It's like, I mean, that they're just completely not like addressing the argument that the other side has.
Right. And then people, once you have your identity though, like you got to defend
and then,
your identity.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
over.
Yeah. So I really do. I try to step back and try not to do that, and realize that most people end up being in the middle on this one. Not 9 months, but it is most people are right in there,
right?
So it's another topic where both extremes are just like.
What do you think the answer is though? Do you think the answer is for like I don't debate abortion with people. I would be surprised if you said you do.
I talk about it meta like this.
Yes.
I talk about like, isn't it crazy that people just don't even listen to each other and they just like
right.
And so I try to like do it, but I don't. I don't like. It's not like I try to convince other people.
Right, but that's what I'm getting at. What is the solution for us if we're actually to make it out of this hellhole of like just horrible vilification? Because I think really that is at the core of it. That I think people in general have just become exhausted from trying to talk. I mean, there's some people that don't want to have conversations, and then it's like other people that feel that there's middle ground, like you and I are talking. Like I think there's middle ground for the vast majority of issues, right? But it's almost like what would be in it for us to like try to bring that middle ground? Because some people just don't want a resolution. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you risk alienating both of the extremes and then being outcast
right
now, because right now it's like it's more like purity tests, and like each side is one thing I heard a little while ago, some movements seek converts and some movements seek heretics. And if you're like the healthier, positive is seeking a convert, like convincing other people of your point of view and kind of your side of things. if you're seeking heretics, you're always on the lookout for the people that you don't want to associate or you want to like cast out of your space and that have the wrong opinions. And so I try to think about that a lot. And both sides seem to be like looking for heretics right now, and then that makes me one because I end up being, it's because I'm. I also don't like labels either because then it kind of it not only like puts you in a box sometimes, but it also makes it tougher to be nuanced, maybe.
Right, and it makes it tougher for the people you're talking to be nuanced because once you engage in labeling even yourself,
because then they see me as that.
Right, but they also feel that once you declare like, oh, I'm a this or I'm a that, other people recognize you're in the game of declarations.
Exactly.
Right, and so it's like it reduces them to a degree. Right. Well, like so, and again, who was it? Chris Rock. He had that great bit about how nobody's 100% conservative or liberal. Right? He's like, crime, I'm conservative. Prostitution, I'm liberal.
Yeah,
and he has an incredible nuance with things. I mean, Chris Rock, I find so insightful.
Yeah,
he started doing comedy when he was like 15, 16.
Young.
He and Dave Chappelle, they were babies. Like, if you go back to some of Chris Rock's old comedy, he went through this horrible divorce. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of his older comedy that's actually resurfacing now is about kind of injustices in the way men are viewed. And he has the classic joke, like, only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. But if you're a dude, you better bring something to the table. Because, like, if you don't bring anything, no one loves you. Yeah. Like, but if you're a dog, everybody loves you. If you're a kid, everybody loves a kid. If you're a woman, like, everybody loves women. It's fine. But if you're a dude and you're useless, nobody's on your side.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had this big bit about how he went into he was going to custody court. He's trying to get custody of his kids, and he's Chris Rock, famous Chris Rock at the time. So I mean, he's making great money. And the woman's asking him like, "What kind of food do you have in your refrigerator?" And he's like, "Lady, what have you heard about me?" I do all right. Like, we have food. Like, do your children have beds? He's like, yeah, I got a 10,000 square foot house. Like, they have beds. They have their own wing. Like, it's fine.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a funny thing. Chris Rock, man, what a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you big into comedy? Because you do a lot of you listen to a lot of stuff when you're farming, right?
I do. I podcast quite a bit. It's what if you ever come to the farm and like you come up to me like, sorry if I get startled. I can't. Yeah. But yeah, I podcast a lot, and quite a good chunk of them are
like comics and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, Pete Holmes. I like the Your Mom's House World with Tom Segura.
Oh my God.
Listen to those most of the time.
Your Mom's House.
So good.
Yeah.
So funny.
Christy P.
Yeah, Christina P.
Yeah. She did you see the one, well, obviously many of them, but Joey Diaz was on there recounting this absurd story about how he hooked up with a one-legged like police lady or post lady. Something. Christy is trying to get him off.
I know.
She's not having it. She's like, do you have any dates coming up, Joey? He's like, yeah. And then you know what I said to her? Yeah. She was just mortified.
She was, she was just trying to, oh my God, that was so good.
So Joey Diaz is obviously just an unbelievable comic, but I think it was Ari Shaffir was talking with Rogan on this interview, and he was like, listen, people come up and ask if the stories that Joey tells are true or not. And he was like, you're asking the wrong question. Like, that's not what you should be focusing on, whether or not they're true, because Joey's such a masterful comedian in the sense that he understands like just the right thing to say for you to be like, what? Like, what are you saying? And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. What matters is like, you just get into the story. Did you ever read Tucker Max?
No.
Oh, Do They Serve Beer in Hell? That was the book. Okay. The author is Tucker Max. Yeah. And it's this atrocious, they have it on audiobook. You should listen.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So it's just this atrocious individual, just couldn't be more disgusting, but he's like this frat boy, turbocharged, most disgusting dumpster stories ever, right? They don't even bear recounting. But what I found out after the fact is I read this book because somebody was like, oh my God, you got to read this. I read it. I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And it turns out it is. So Tucker Max is a character that someone made up and wrote these unbelievable stories about. So it was back when blogging was still a thing. So this guy starts blogging, making up these ridiculous stories, and he gains popularity. So he writes this book, Do They Serve Beer in Hell? And it's all about him just like sleeping with women and drinking and all this stuff. But you find out it's not true, right? So a lot of the stories you get sucked into were just on the border of believable, even though they were so unreal. Like one story, I mean, as crass as it is, of course it's crass. Prepare yourself. So he's at this tailgate. He goes around promoting this book, and he goes to this tailgate party at this college football game, and he's trying to find, everybody has these RVs, and he's like trying to hook up with this girl. So he's going to different RVs to find one that's like no one's in it, and they go in and they start hooking up, but she has pepper spray in her purse, and they roll over the purse. The whole RV fills up with pepper spray. They're like naked running out of this place. He doesn't know where his clothes are because they're but he can't see anything. Everyone's screaming, and you're reading this and you can kind of like, okay, maybe like I can't, and it turns out it's all a lie.
Completely made up.
But it was, again, the thing that was great about it, from a storytelling standpoint, is it was just on the border of believable.
Yeah.
Just on the border of, you could see someone like him getting into this situation. Yeah. And you give yourself an allowance. You're like, maybe he'll elaborate it a little bit, but like, it's probably true. Like the broad strokes are true, but it's all false. And again, you could write a disgusting, plausible story, but it's getting people to like buy into the fact that it's real that makes it cool. I think that's kind of like what Joey Diaz does. Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of it's true. I'm sure from what he just has led a crazy life. I mean, but yeah. And God, it relates to other stuff. I mean, you're kind of a Peterson guy, right?
Oh yes, very much so.
So like, I mean, he talks about that all the time. Like it is the importance of like a story in the Bible that it's true, that like that it happened, right, or that it's true. And is that the same thing or is it different? And so I'm totally into that.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that Peterson said about stories recently that I really appreciate is like, you have to, apparently he had there was a version of Superman that was from the like early 80s. There's a story of Superman, the comic and stuff had been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. But there was a version of Superman in the 80s that became like essentially invincible. Right. So nothing actually could beat him.
Yeah.
And people lost interest in it. And that's when the version had to be changed to like introducing kryptonite and a bunch of other things. Because they're like, look, in the absence of an actual problem or a weakness or something that makes him even remotely human. Because Superman goes from being super, super, super awesome to weaker than human beings with the kryptonite. So he oscillates from like the best to even more pathetic than us. So to say you bring an aspect of, his frailty is an understatement. He becomes like an infant, right? Like he can't do anything. But it's interesting because you have to skirt that line with the things that make us actually want to follow a story. Because if it's a foregone conclusion, no one cares anymore. They're like, whatever, like we know he's going to win. And that's the whole nuance with like the Hollywood ending. You suck people in, like Titanic. Mm-hmm. Like, do you remember seeing Titanic? Did you ever see that movie?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, it was like the highest grossing movie of all time.
Right. I was right at the right age. I was in middle school when it came out. So it was like I'm just old enough to see it. Like,
yeah. So I got so sucked into that movie. I remember I was a sophomore. I forgot that it sank at the end. I was like, no.
Oh, right. You were, because you're,
Right, I was so taken by it, and obviously, if you were like, it's gonna sink, he's gonna die, even though kind of in your background, you're taken by the story, so that you forget where it's going. Anyway, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask you about your crops.
Let's talk about the farm, man.
Let's talk about it.
timestamp it so you can be like, we
know,
rambled
right?
for a few while.
Yeah, prepare yourself. So anyway, your season's over. I went there the other day. It was like a week ago to just see like, oh man, I wonder if there are any berries left. And there were berries left, but they were black and hard as rock. Yeah, just pathetic.
They freeze.
Yeah. So what's the next step? Does it essentially just go kind of like into hibernation for the next 4 months?
Yeah.
Hang with the family.
Yeah. I get to stay at home dad a little bit. So yeah, it's great, and I love my time off, and I do the math on the hours that I work during the year, and even with like December and January mostly off, I still average over 40 hours a week. So like
You earn your time
I feel
off.
like I justify that time.
Yeah.
It's great.
You can say it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody understands farm life is not easy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. I get to chill a little bit.
Yeah, I bet. Man, so I had when I was doing SAT prep for almost 20 years, I had something very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So in the summer I'd take, it's like 3 weeks in January and then 2 in July. So there was like a 5-week stretch where I got to do nothing because of the way the test dates were lined up. I didn't have to worry about, I was always like 7 to 9 weeks out from a test date. So I didn't have to start back until July. And then in December, same kind of thing. So first week of the December, the SAT, second weekend is the ACT. Excuse me. And then I get about 3 weeks off.
Yep.
But man, every single time. Do you remember that Seinfeld, The Year of George, when he's like, he gets laid off, but he gets severance, and he's like in sweatpants, and he wants to take up Frolf, and he ends up like hurting his back, so he can't do anything.
So good, yeah.
It was great, but it's not quite like that, but pretty close, because when you have all of that free time, everything, it's like, well, I want to do these things, but I'll get to that tomorrow. I'm just gonna unwind for a little bit. And then by the end of the 5-week stretch in the summer, I had only gotten like half of what I wanted to get done.
Right.
And 2, I was dying to get back at it. I was like, I was just jonesing to I want to get producing. I want to get making. I want to get working again. It's so amazing how
I get that way too.
Oh, I can only imagine by end of January.
And it's so funny with how like, I don't want to say like burnt out, but like just tired I am at the end of the season. Like September rolls around, I get a second wind in September. August is tough though, and then but yeah, I'm so tired of it. But yeah, by December I'm like, all right, I'm sitting there, by the fire with the seed catalog and doing that kind of thing. And then January comes around, I'm like, oh, ready to start these seeds. And then I pretty much get started in February. I do the first seedings in early February and stuff ramps up that from there.
Are those in a greenhouse? Like when you do seedings, like I remember seeing the movie Constant Gardener. It was about African politics and things. It was a while ago, right? But he was this he was way into plants and he was always doing these little like seeds. So do you go into the greenhouse and then like do all the seeds there and like get warming lamps or something, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so that main greenhouse in there, that's the propagation house, prop house. And I don't have, I have a germination chamber. So Starting seeds, you need moisture, moisture, and
heat,
and the heat. Especially, and the heat is more just to get the plants up.
Gotcha.
After that, yeah, I don't let the prop house freeze, so I have a little like kerosene heater. I should have invested in or had Hunter Homes invest in the propane heat, but it's usually not quite that cold. Like a lot of the stuff I start early in like February. That stuff can handle a little freeze, but like I get my tomatoes up, that can't freeze in there. I got to start over again. So I got this little like just like it looks like a little cannon thing, but it's a kerosene heater, and that does the job. So at first when you're just trying to get seeds to germinate, it's the heat, and so I have this little box that has a little. Essentially, it's like
an incubator or something,
like a
right?
bedpan heater at the bottom, and then it's filled with water, so it keeps the humidity at like 100%. So I don't have to water it when it's in there, and it just sits in there in the dark because it doesn't need light yet. Most seeds don't need light to germinate. There's a lot of flowers that do, but that's separate. But for most of the seeds, and so that's why if you're doing like seed starting at home, putting the seeds like at the top of your fridge. It's a little warmer at the top there. That can really help get them to pop. And then once they pop, when you see them, then you take them out. I take mine out of the germination chamber and then put it on the tables that we have. And
got it.
At some point, I do kind of want to invest in some like table heat. Basically, you just run like copper piping and then run hot water through it. Pretty easy to do, but it's kind of a lot of investment to get that going.
And because you have to have like a water heater, and then you have to have like an inline pump, and you got to do all kinds of things.
But yeah, then that'll keep the soil warm too, and then the starts will just grow better. But I mean, once that sun's up during the day, that greenhouse gets pretty warm.
So that's what I wanted to ask. The insulation, I mean, obviously you let all the light in, but like it's not super thick. So like, what's the temperature? Like if it's 30 degrees outside, but it's sunny, is it like 55 in there?
Yeah, at least. And it'll keep going. And I have automatic fans to come on because at that point, like on a day like today, real sunny, it might overheat after a while. And so I got to have automatic fans in there that one side opens a vent in the back and the other starts a fan and blows out the hot air. And that was a lifesaver. The first couple years, I didn't have power to it, and so that was tough. I'd have to like roll the sides up during the day and roll them down at night, because at night it's only like a degree or two warmer inside. Now there's actually a double layer of plastic in there, and you'll notice in the spring it looks like it's about to pop. I actually have a thing that pumps air into it, and so it inflates, because air is actually a decent insulator, so that will kind of keep the temperature, especially like early nighttime. But you get to like 3 a.m, all that heat's gone, and it's really only going to be like a degree or two so warmer in the greenhouse than it is outside.
So all the little plants that are popping, they can handle down to like 30 degrees for a period of hours.
Yeah. Yeah, even like the cells, like the blocks of soil will be, like, so things like kale starts, they're kind of fine with that. Maybe not when they're first going, they need a little bit of
little help.
Little help. But once they get up and established, they can handle the freezing and thawing. Now, cucumbers, tomatoes, squash, those can't ever freeze. The cells are different, and so they're toast when they get frozen. But
right. Well, they're the things people like to eat. Who likes kale?
Right. I know. Well, so onions, those are big. Lettuce can handle a light freeze. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, lettuce is usually the lettuce plant. Like the system is used to just losing the outside constantly, right? And just That's the whole nature of plucking off lettuce, right? You just leave the plant, you keep taking outside bits.
Yeah, kale, you do that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a series of different kale plants back in California, just like dinosaur kale and all of these other things. We were making these kales. We made kale smoothies for like it was like 8 years.
It's too much. I like kale's okay. I like to cook it though. The smoothies, it's so like nutrient dense. Like I feel like I gotta cook it, otherwise my gut just gets wrecked by it.
I don't think it's that bioavailable though.
That's what I mean.
raw.
That's why you gotta cook it. Yeah.
Yeah, but so I had a hot minute where I was like, I'm gonna try keto diet, just for fun. I wasn't trying to lose weight, but I was just like, I'll give it a shot. And so we have these green smoothies that had spinach, kale, chard in them, and then a bunch of fruits and like carrot, banana, whatever in it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a man. I'm going to just put the greens and water, blend that, and drink it. So for like a month, I was drinking down this just poison of, and I love spinach, but the Swiss chard and the kale, I'm telling you right now, like it legit poisoned me. Yeah. I got so sick after a month of doing this. I was like,
too much.
Oh my God, I can't, like I have to stop. And I would feel sick all day. And I was, really? you know, when you do something that's just dumb, but you convince yourself that you're like, this is me getting, stronger, or like, this is me, like, it's like, no, you're just literally poisoning yourself with this like uncooked kale every day. Like you don't feel good when you eat it. It literally burns going down your throat. Yeah. Like that's not good, man.
Yeah.
But I mean, classic idiot me.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff is because like plants have like stuff in them to keep pests off of them, and so like we kind of get affected by that too. So that's why like I'm actually slightly allergic to chard. Like I get a tickle in my throat if I have it raw. Beets will do the same thing. Actually, kind of the same plant. So I have to cook chard. Like it doesn't need to be much, but just I got to get a little heat on it, and and then from what I've read and stuff, it's a little bit more bioavailable for you,
right?
Easier for your body to take up the good nutrients that are in there. Otherwise, you're just, peeing or pooping it out.
Oh God, yeah, and it's just burning through your system.
And it's not,
It's so weird to like with leafy greens. I think people don't really get that, where it's like there's a distinct change before you do that. But like with a potato. Nobody wants to eat a raw potato, right? It's like it's very clear that there are things that are plants that you have to cook in order to like actually make it through your system. I mean, I'm a huge fan of potatoes, but what were we just talking about? The farming that you do and dealing with. You mentioned Monsanto earlier. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like the whole mass ag and industrial, they own your seeds, they own the whole production chain.
Yeah,
and you're just kind of one of the cogs in the wheel.
Yeah, this is another one where I do like a little more nuance than a lot of like other regenerative.
All good or all bad.
Exactly. It's another case of that. But yeah, I mean, the giant seed companies and the revolving door between them and the government, and just a stranglehold on the food supply. Like, maybe let's simplify down to like GMOs. Like, sure. I'm not super big on like being afraid of like the science behind it, or like we're eating Franken food or anything. Usually GMOs are just enabling, they're just like ramping up industrial ag, just the next step. I don't think the GMO itself is like an existential risk. There's a slight risk because there's always, you're editing genes, and I think there's like just the hubris of humans sometimes thinking we can control everything that way is problematic. But that's not what worries me as much as just and Monsanto isn't even Monsanto anymore. They merged, I think, with. I don't even remember who, like Syngenta or something. And just another
company formerly known as Monsanto.
Right, yeah. But it's just like having them patenting life and having that sort of control of the food supply is bad. So I like thinking about creating a better food system, one that's more resilient, one that's more in the hands of the people rather than corporations. It doesn't mean you can't like try to make it as efficient as possible through markets and stuff like that. So I'm not, like I think it'll look, but it might, like a good regenerative ag system might even look in some ways a lot like the current industrial food system now, just with maybe some different values and goals. Because Yeah, I don't know. We could go a bunch of different ways on this, and I don't know what,
and I'm not trying
interesting
to.
you like. It's just in terms of like because, yeah, what I like to think about, what I've been like spend my time thinking about is like how do we get like, because like the amount of food that's grown in the Treasure Valley that is consumed in the Treasure Valley is like less than 1%. So we only have up to go, and that's going to take like, I used to think like a bunch of like individual farms and stuff was the way to go, but we got to think bigger than that. And this is just if I was talking to my other regenerative ag folks and people interested in food sovereignty, like this is the kind of conversation I like having now, is like, how do we cooperate? And like, because I mean, essentially that's what is happening now. If you if you have a giant farm and you're doing soybeans or whatever, like you just call up somebody and like there's an entire like there's an entire system that is very interconnected, and you have a crop ready, you call somebody to do it, they'll pay for it and pick it up, and then you're done with it. So like that's super efficient, like in some ways. But God, there's just I'm getting really off the mark.
No, you're fine.
Because like there's just so many different like ways to go, and I do get excited about it. So I'm always like,
This is why I was asking.
Yeah,
because
get me back
I
on
don't
track
think like you were saying. Look, the downsides of large corporate ownership of food crops, right, and seeds and things like that, and patents on life, that has been well documented in my mind. I think it's very clear. Anybody who's paid attention at all is like,
Yeah, most people kind of know it. Yeah.
They're like, oh, Monsanto's bad, and all these Roundup is bad, and whatever. That's how they feel. But I think that really betrays the realities of our food system. For instance, the last time you and I spoke, you made a point of saying, look, there is no waste in nature, right? And you're like, look, if a plant rots, right, or when you get like a tomato and say that tomato rots in your fridge and you throw it away, that's going, like, there's a dump. You can go see. It goes in the ground. They mix it with sand and dirt, and, other people dump other things on there. And, if stuff rots out in the field, then it goes back into the earth. And, like, the earth doesn't care that the tomato sprouted out of the ground and then fell back onto the ground. The thing that struck me about that in particular is like, okay, but I think what we see as food is this culmination of like human effort and focus with a very specific utility. So whereas the world, like the dirt may not care that the tomato came out and then went back down, you and I care because that's an opportunity for consumption and alternate use to the dirt, right? The dirt wasn't doing anything for us initially. Then we somehow navigate to grow a tomato, which is like a miracle. And then the tomato grows and we fail to pick it and then it dies. It's like you lost opportunity.
We feel like we wasted it.
Right, exactly. So I think what I was trying to get at originally with waste in our previous conversation is a lack of harvesting clear potential. Right. From a nutrient or like molecular standpoint, maybe the dirt became a tomato and then it went back to dirt. Fine. But from us, it matters. But again, the idea that people don't actually recognize what these companies have done either, to me, is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So your point, like I was saying, there's no waste. That's kind of like a counterintuitive point with food. But I also think that you have some light to shed on the nature of the scientific progress in our food system that yields these incredible crops, right? Like the bounties are unbelievable. A dear friend of mine who's, I wouldn't say dear friend, but friend from high school who I still keep in contact with now and then is this PhD chemist, right? We both grew up in this not great town, and Indian dude, went on to Berkeley and then went on to, I can't remember where he got his PhD, but he works for Lawrence Livermore Labs. And I was asking him about his thoughts on GMOs. And he said, look, organic's all well and fine. It costs more, right? There's no nutrient, like it's very clear. It's not like organic stuff is from a nutrient standpoint different, right? Like you're not getting better, I don't know, D or C or A or whatever from an organic.
Sometimes.
It depends. It really depends.
In industrial organic, you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, right. And if you're doing small scale and you have like your own little earth that you turn and maybe you can get something that's
we can talk about soil health in a bit. But
exactly. But the point is, he's like, look, from my standpoint, whatever trade-off we've gotten, whatever negative we've gotten out of scientifically modifying these things, getting GMOs, he's like, is totally negated by the fact that they've saved hundreds of millions of people from starvation. He's like, I'm on the side of keeping people from starving to death. Mm-hmm. And his perspective really kind of shocked me because I was expecting him to some degree to say like, well, organic has this benefit, that benefit. He's like, how about the fact that organic never saved people from starving to death on a world scale? But we make, golden rice and we come up with these different crops or corn crops that save people from starving. And we figured out ways to use this one harvest for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of different uses, and
we grow so much of it that we've had to invent things to put it in.
Right. And we invent different types of food. Yeah. Like cornflakes is not a food, it's not this is an interesting thing. And
which that's why I would talk to your friend. I'd be like, so isn't that kind of like I think we grow too much corn in this country. And
well, so that was the point of King Corn, right?
Right. Yeah.
That documentary. Well, but do we grow too much corn?
I think so.
Why is that?
Well, because of that. I mean, we're inventing stuff to put it in.
But you and I don't suffer from having that stuff invented.
No.
Like we do invent things to put it in. That doesn't mean
no.
It's
But
bad.
if we're talking about feeding the world, that's not what that's doing.
What? Oh, you mean because we use it for like batteries or whatever?
Yeah, yeah. And so the golden rice thing is an interesting one because like the reason why they started people in those populations in like Thailand and in Asia were going like blind because of the lack of which is it, vitamin
I can't remember.
D.
It was one of we're on the same page.
It's because they were kind of I'm not gonna get the story
broad strokes,
quite right, broad strokes. They switched to a different type of agriculture. So they started a monocrop, and their rice wasn't giving them stuff, but their like more natural ancestral diet. They weren't always going blind,
right?
So like, what happened? And they stopped eating the bok choy that like grows native like around the rice fields, and they just started eating the rice, and it didn't have everything. So then science comes in, creates the rice that has this nutrient in it, and it helps. Right. And so it looks like, oh, look, they saved it. But it's like you go back a little bit further, and they didn't have that problem anyway. So, like,
but the situation that they're farming was, if you go back to where they had bok choy and it wasn't a monocrop, they also weren't trying to solve the same problems they have now.
Exactly.
Right? Like they needed higher yield. So like you could take the existing farmland and not do the monocrop and eat the bok choy and have varied diets and everything. But then you would have people starving and stuff because you're not producing
at
enough.
This point. Yes.
Right.
And depending on when we're talking here, when these happen, different places. I mean, there was probably like a lot of political turmoil and stuff, and why they've shifted to basically our system of agriculture that we kind of exported around the world. That's you talk about trade-offs. That's part of the trade-off is you start having these issues of nutrient deficiencies, and yields will be good, and the yield itself can like it has severely oversimplified, but like increase populations and stuff, and like bringing in food from outside will increase population. So then if you like step back and like, whoa, we can barely feed ourselves. Like you talk about like food waste and stuff. Gosh, we waste about 40% of it. I think it's way up there.
Right.
And so
go to Vegas.
We don't need to keep growing more food. We just need to be better about like getting it to the places where there's like an emergency, where like there's crop failures or whatever. So like the whole notion of like we need GMOs to like feed the planet. I don't know if that really pencils out. It might, and I do think GMOs are important for stopgaps and to like fix the people should be able to see, and so like getting that better rice was great, and then the green revolution where they made the stronger grain so that it wouldn't fall over in the field, like that did help a lot of people in a lot of places, and so like I'm that's why I am nuanced about this. I'm not saying like no GMOs, but like a lot of times the arguments, I don't know if it like just like the argument that they're all bad.
Right.
They're
not all good.
It's not like that. It's just having that honest conversation about the trade-offs.
Right.
And I'm not really afraid of GMO. So like I think your friend and I would probably agree about 80%.
Right.
It's just like those little details.
Right.
That well, let's think about this. Like why were they getting the problem? And is that the way forward? Is it more consolidation of these companies patenting a form of life? I think the arguments for like seed saving and I don't know if you've heard of Vandana Shiva.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, great speaker on this stuff. Because like India, the last 2 decades, things are a lot better now. But like in the 90s and the early aughts, things are rough there. Like peasant suicides,
yeah, right.
and a lot of it had to do with the debts they were incurring by basically having a certain type of agriculture kind of rammed down their throat. Like, you're going to grow this way, you're going to grow it with this seed, and you can't save the seed. You have to buy it from us every time, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, that's it.
There's the dark things.
Yeah,
there.
But I mean, India has been having a problem with like indentured servants and like I remember seeing videos on this when I was in elementary school, like in the late 80s, about it's like, I remember this one video in particular, this young kid who was about my age, he was like 7 or 8, and he was laying down bricks, and the narrator goes on to explain that his grandfather took out a loan to try to do something, and they had been paying off the loan since. And so here he was 7, not getting an education. He was just laying bricks as a 7-year-old, and he was going to lay bricks like this until he died. And, obviously you don't forget that, because I still remember it.
Right,
I remember it now.
Yeah.
But, so that's not to say that ag companies coming in and doing that to farmers is acceptable, but I think you have a different, you obviously have a different culture and a different,
right. You got a caste system.
Yeah.
That's
like it's
really stringent and
Talk
no
about cultural
upward mobility.
Could you imagine if somebody there tried to pull the BS from over here? They're like, no, I identify as what the Brahmin or something.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. You were untouchable. He's like, no, but I don't identify as that. Like, no, I identify as very rich and very powerful, and
That's
no problem.
Lived experience and truth.
That's oh my gosh. Yeah. Did you read that book Shogun?
No.
Very famous old school book, but it was all about this Dutch sailor explorer who like landed in Japan, and they had caste system and everything too, and everyone who dealt with essentially the butcher, like slaughterhouses, were like these untouchable people, and like you couldn't mess around with them because they were dealing with death all day long. Man, what a wild thing. Like in here, I went down to Gem State Meatpacking to get my pig for 4th of July, and I wanted to like meet these guys. I'm like, what's the operation here? Like, they make their own chorizo sausage there, so you walk in and you get this unbelievable hit of spice smell and whatnot, because they're making this really flavorful sausage actually there. Like, you could look over and you see guys messing with meat and mixing, and it's like now. I knew the butchers back in California, and here wanted to do the same thing, but you think like a couple hundred years ago, you wouldn't even want to shake hands with them. It's like it's the whole, and perfect example of cultural disparities that it's very hard to understand, right? Because why? You go back 200 years. Why wouldn't you want to shake hands with somebody dealing with beef? Well, what do you think they had? Meyer lemon, soap to just wash up and go home. It's like there was a group of people that did things that were exceedingly dangerous, and we may consider distasteful, but that means they were dangerous then. Yeah. Like somebody dealing in sewage or raw meat and stuff, like had probabilities of picking up pathogens and diseases that the average person just could not come into contact with. Like, what a trip, man. How much of that is rooted in like actual utility from like hundreds and thousands of years ago? Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of it, I might think that people would be more likely to be okay with it back then, because you probably had killed an animal at some point, like depending on how far back we're going, but like if you ate meat, like you were much closer to the process of death, at least you probably like saw stuff hanging. You probably maybe even cut some meat off of something at some point, or killed a chicken or whatever. And so it was a little more normalized. Now, like we think about the guy in the slaughterhouse that kills however many cows a day, and we're like, how does that guy even like it's not like we wouldn't go shake his hand, but we would be like in awe of what they were doing, because like we're just so far removed, the average person, from the death of what we consume, you know?
Yeah.
But you're right about the cleanliness aspect. It's like, yeah.
Well, yeah, or just like cultural things that are legacy practices that had very real justification back in the day. That's, I mean, like the guy dealing with, you see this in Game of Thrones. Have you been watching the most recent one, by the way?
I haven't. I decided to go with the Lord of the Rings one first. And,
oh my gosh!
But I finished that tonight. I'm gonna be.
How was the Lord of the Rings?
Oh God, I loved it.
It was good.
It was great. Have you watched it yet?
No, okay. I was getting through Game of Thrones, and then,
gotcha. Yeah, see, I heard you're not supposed to. You shouldn't watch both because you're at the same time, because you're gonna get like. And so like I just decided to go with Lord of the. I'll watch the Dragon one in my.
Talk about an excess of something. Forget the corn. Yeah, fine. We have too much corn. Fine. How about an excess of unbelievable media? Like, do we need another Lord of the Rings? Can I handle another Harry Potter spinoff? Like, I can't take another season of Yellowstone. Like, come on, man. Like, we have the quality media is I think, probably, I was reading an article years ago. They're like, the problem is not junk TV. The problem is unbelievable quality TV.
Right? It's good stuff.
It's great. And even from an educational standpoint, from a kid's media, like we had Sesame Street back in the day. It's like, oh, fine, Big Bird. But now the shows they have, you ever seen Peg Plus Cat? It's on like Netflix. Yeah. Peg Plus Cat.
I mean, I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's
my
great.
Daughter's
like
not that old yet, but yeah.
Oh, my wife and I still they have like the most unbelievable characters. It's like, who wrote this stuff?
Right.
And it's so great. Like, we still, when our kids are not around, we find ourselves reciting lines.
Yeah.
Because it's so well done. Bluey, the dog?
Yeah.
I'm not a big Blue the dog fan. No, he kind of creeps me out.
My sister just introduced me. He's like, "Hey, this is kind of funny."
It's kind of funny. Maybe I shouldn't be so judgy. I don't know. Yeah, but
yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there.
There's too much.
Yeah,
like there's so much. We don't like. You probably do reading, but I think like I don't read very frequently, and I really should. Like I'm a big fan of audiobooks and stuff, but just the time, somebody reading, when I see somebody reading at night, it's like 8:00 at night, and they're like kind of on their couch. They got their book, maybe a cup of tea, chamomile, help them sleep or something. Right? And they're just sitting there. I always think, I'm like, what kind of rich, greedy prick are you?
Right.
Like, how do you have the time to just piss away your evening? Like 8:00 to 10:00 to me is like, make sure the kids are down, make sure they stay down, clean the whole kitchen up, like drag myself into the shower, get cleaned up, and then it's like 9:45. I'm like, I'm dying. Slowly.
If I were to read a book, I'd be out by 10 at 9:45.
I was like, I don't have an hour to sit down. Somebody kept recommending. It was like 2 years ago. Somebody kept recommending this book to me. She's like, you really got to read it. You really got to read it. And I'd see her periodically. She's like, did you pick it up? I'm like, no, I didn't pick it up. Yeah. I don't have that kind of time.
Right.
Like, I'm not some like bougie dude who just has like hours. I'm like, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm just going to sit and like scan this book with my eyeballs, like, and just like, I'm going to put myself in the author's story and like really kind of just nuance my way through it. No, man, like I'm doing laundry and scrubbing cast iron pots and pans. Like, I don't have time for this.
Right. Yeah. With a kid, it's hard to find time to read for sure. But at the same time, I'm scrolling on my phone. Like, it's an excuse.
But that's not okay. But hang on now. Because everybody consumes some degree of social media, or most people do. Yeah. But you consume it in like tiny chunks.
That's
some
true.
people go down rabbit holes. Like I might futz around on something briefly. Okay, but it's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. What am I supposed to pick this thing up and like 2-3 minutes, flip through like a couple pages? I don't even read that fast. Like
right.
I'm not making it through that much.
Yeah.
Like I think the reason podcasts are as popular as they are is because I think most people can consume them as a second or third activity.
Yeah.
Books, you are all in. But I can read an audiobook when I'm running.
Yeah.
Right. And if I'm not, it can't be the primary task at hand because it's all consuming. I can watch a show while I'm washing dishes. I can, do all kinds, but like a book, man.
Yeah.
A book is like the holy grail of like, you can't
so
multitask.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So look, I feel like you'll give me an honest answer with this, by the way. I'm very excited for it. What do you think about everything that's happening here?
Here?
Yeah. And like, I'm not talking politics.
Yeah.
I'm talking like people to people. And the reason I ask is I stumbled on, I'm on the I Love Eagle Facebook page, and I love this area. This is the best place in the world to live, right? Like, and let me be clear. We're in the U.S. That's number one, right? That's great. Anywhere in the U.S. is way better than anywhere else, right? And then we're here in Idaho, which I think is awesome, right? Way better than the state I was in. So that's great. We got 2 wins there. Yeah. Then we're in this particular area of Idaho, and now we come down to this neighborhood, right? All the best, in my opinion. Best place. And if I could find better, I would go better, right? But so I'm on the I Love Eagle Facebook page, and somebody put up a thing about the development downtown. Right, the right next to Rembrandt's, they were going to put the city planning division was listening to an argument for a 4-story building that was like 54 feet 6 inches. Okay, code is only 35, so this developer was asking for an exemption to get a height exemption to build a 4-story spot, and it was going to have condos on a couple of the floors and then some mixed use, nothing crazy. And he put this on, so I reached out to him and said, hey, I know where you're talking about. Like, would you like to come chat about it? Because he was saying there's going to be this hearing where they're going to decide to let it go or not. So he calls me and he says, look, I'm not interested in the podcast, but this is where I got all my information. You can look it up here. And, people should really think about this because, and he's a native, a local guy. He said, because I saw it, but I don't think anyone's paying attention. And I just think that'd be out of place. So I do a little podcast on that. This guy reaches out to me, a different guy, and is like, hey, let me give you some history of this area. And his argument was, look, Eagle cannot continue existing as a bedroom community. We need commerce. And the historic downtown area, wonderful. Yeah, great history. There are only 3 buildings on the historic registry, but fine. I know you like it and everyone likes it. But what you have to realize is there was a plan made by Nancy Merrill when she was on the city council in the late 80s. That's what Merrill Park is named after, if I'm not mistaken, right? The big chicken. She was the big chicken farmer. And anyway, she realized that we needed to make Eagle into something else, or we could. And we find ourselves now, today, in the middle of this ramp-up plan that started decades ago and will go decades into the future. And it strikes me that people move here with the idea that like, oh, we should keep Eagle the way it is. And it's like, dude, we're in the middle of... We collectively are in the middle of this incredible transition in the area. And for people that know the history like this guy did and like you potentially do, I'm always wondering, like, what do you think about this? Like, do you like it as a resident, or do you feel like it's too much or too fast, or do you want it to go forward or backwards? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of takes on it or know the history all that well. But I can talk about the general feelings and stuff, and a lot of the people that have been here for a long time or their whole life, and tend to be my friends that are I guess more lefty. They do talk about the changing landscape of it, and because those are back in the early aughts, like it was like. Boise, downtown Boise, really kind of wanted to be Portland.
Oh yeah,
it kind of felt like that.
Oh,
but there was still there was something about it that it wasn't quite that far. But it was still great, and it was creative, and there were and then I think the animosity and bitterness is less about like cultural things and more it had to do with a lot of the ramp up of the housing costs up here. And like, so if you're native and you're from here, like you're seeing like these price hikes from people just coming in grab stuff, and that there wasn't anything that could felt like you could really do about it.
Yeah.
And so there was just some things there, and I think we are in a weird transition of and then and then NIMBY people kind of move in, and they're like, once they're in, they don't want it to change, and so like they're really
how funny is that? Literally, like you got here a month ago, and now you're saying keep it the way it is. Like you haven't even tried 10 restaurants. Like what do you mean?
No more development. Like,
yeah,
what?
right.
So it's tough right now. I think Boise, in particular, and Eagle, they're trying to figure stuff out, and it does. I don't have any great takes on it, because I and traffic that's always going to be a thing, just with so many people moving here. We're always going to be playing catch up with schools, with the roads, with kind of everything, because this is just such a great place to live. And so, just like the growing pains, and then like things are going to change. Like none of us are entitled to have stuff stay the way that we necessarily want it to. So I get a little bit frustrated by the people that like really resist change and have gotten maybe bitter about it, because it's like I don't know, I don't have that view of it. So in general, I'm always in support of the more we can have walkable, bikeable communities, the better. And I think this one in particular is already just culturally and just with just walking around here, or when I doing deliveries during the summer and seeing all these kids out and about, like this really is a special place. And if we can continue making it in sort of that vision, I think continue to be a good, better place. So I do like your point about commerce. Like, if we can stop driving our cars freaking everywhere, so far, like that'd be nice.
Right.
And we should try to think of stuff in that way.
Right.
And
one of his points was kind of exactly what you're saying. He said, look, you go down to the village in Meridian, it's like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever it is. You want to go like Big Al's or something, right? Like it's a ways away. He said all of that money is going to Meridian.
Yeah.
He's like, but the problem is we don't have options within Eagle. Like we have some great restaurants. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. Excuse me. There are some good options. He said, but we need to do a better job of capturing the dollars that live in Eagle and keeping them in Eagle, because we don't have enough of that here. And it's, again, this is what he was saying to me. And I'm not that old, right? Like I'm 40 and I'm not a city planner. So for me, a lot of these things, it's very complex. I'm like, I had never really thought about that. It's like the source of revenue is this, and this is the plan. But I appreciate where you're coming from, which is, look, everything changes. Yeah. Like when we moved out of the town we were moving in, it was changing drastically. Housing prices had skyrocketed. We were priced out. Right. We even owned our house. But it was too small, and the quality of life was not there at all. And the community had turned kind of upside down. Well, very much upside down. And all of these problems existed. So I'm very sympathetic when it's like, look, Matt, you moved in here. You became part of the problem for the people that were living here initially. It's like, well, look, I don't want to be part of the problem, but like,
just to be clear, I don't believe that. Like, that's not my take.
I appreciate you. Thank you for not thinking I'm part of the problem.
If that's what you got out of what I said, sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. What I'm saying is I'm sympathetic to both sides, because people moving in, for instance, there was this mass wave of population shift from Silicon Valley to our little town. So Danville was this very nice, cool little town. Oh, everyone from Danville that lives in Eagle says Eagle reminds them of what Danville was like 20 years ago, before it became insane. Okay, and it became insane for a number of reasons. Not that things got developed, but primarily the population became an extreme type A population. You had incredible political unrest. You have this like weird social thing. The community itself, I felt, was very much demoralized. Like you could convince a lot of the Danville population of pretty much anything. And there was no like real clear, like, no, that's, I don't agree with that. Right. And if, for instance, when BLM, blew through, everybody's like, oh my God, are we racist? I'm like, I don't know. Are you? Like, you don't have to ask me if you're racist. Like, I'm not. They're like, I think you are. You're white. I'm like, I'm not even white. I'm Mexican. They're like, oh my God, I'm sorry. It's like, what is wrong with you? Right? So it was I very much believe a cultural issue that kind of overtook it. And again, California saw so much money from the tech boom that people flooded into Danville. Yeah. And things just got crazy.
Because it was like a cute little town type
thing.
Thing?
So Danville's is very much a cute little town, but it was also safe, right? So Danville was the safest town in all of California. And Danville's in a valley, very much like Dry Creek Ranch, right? So like you have hills on either side. There's no, the mass transit, the like BART trains, right? Didn't run into Danville. They ran into the surrounding communities. So Danville was in this valley that existed like just 30 minutes away from these mass economic hubs and was not directly next to these mass transit spots. So you could drive from Danville to BART and then go, but you didn't have to live right next to BART to get the benefit. And it just became this little pocket of very cool restaurants, like nightlife, very safe, very good schools. But with that came all of this other nonsense that was later. Very unfortunate.
Yeah, and I've heard that's a typical thing. Like, so the creative types are like go into a place, make it freaking awesome, and then the like more professional working class, and then upper are like they want in on that too, and so they come in, but just by their nature of the culture that they're going to bring it, they're going to change it a little bit, and then the creative types leave, and now here you are.
Right, creative types leave. Absolutely, creative types leave, and then all this money flooded in there, and things got very weird. So again, I'm sympathetic to both sides. Yeah. So I'm here
that's
now.
The thing. You just then you move.
Right, then you move, and I'm not saying to in any way, shape, or form that the people that were here before me, if they don't like me or whatever, then you could just move. Right. What I'm trying to figure out is there has to be
cold too to just be like
yeah, and that's not my sentiment. My sentiment is, hey, I moved here because it's awesome. Okay. And I very much feel that. I believe it. Every day I just thank God that I'm here and having these experiences in life, because I didn't know that this is what life was. And at the same time, I think there needs to be some merging of cultures here, which is you have the people that were native and have all of these experiences, but the town was changing before I moved here. Yeah. Right. Like Eagle was awesome and cool and on the up. Like I didn't make Eagle what it was. Yeah. And so it is changing. Maybe maybe the people that are moving here as of late are part of a different type of change, but like it's all changing, right? Like this guy pointed out, he said, look, the development downtown, the revitalizing historic downtown Eagle, that's been in the works for 20 years. Right. So whatever it is like, look, things are always changing. Whether or not Californians started moving here, things were already changing for the Eagle community. And I think it's just very interesting that we have this opportunity to start seeing each other as, I hope we see each other more as less as like Californians versus Idahoans, and just like, look, we're all just neighbors now. Like we're in it now together. Yeah. We rise and fall together.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's always like I don't know if you keep Boise kind is kind of like a sentiment or phrase that's been around for a long time, and what's kind of sad is the people who I think are the least kind are sometimes the native people that are like to be kind doesn't mean to like close your borders off, and so like or to act like so like I can be a little bit more frustrated with the people complaining about change. It's like, well, what do you mean? And like, what would you propose? Like, what do you like? So, I am just more on the like, keep Boise kind, like, and just relax. Like, we can't. It's like we were talking earlier before. Like just worry about yourself.
Yeah, right.
Like.
Well, I am sympathetic, for instance, property tax law.
Right.
So, like, there are people that have been here for a long time. They're like, listen, I didn't even have a mortgage on my house. I paid, $200 a month for my property tax. Now it's $800 a month. Yeah. I was like, all right, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I can see that really being an issue and somebody
and
being frustrated. Yeah.
And there's ways to go about it, but we don't have to scapegoat Californians moving here. That's what I mean, but by the and just being resistant to change. Like,
yeah, I think it's more the change. It's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't intend to be like, oh, it's California versus Idaho. It's like,
right?
It's more
no, but when I hear that, I'm always
people,
just like, oh, I cringe at that because it's just such a low resolution way to look at the whole situation. Yeah,
right. That's a good way to put it. Low resolution. Yeah, it's like, look, that's not flushed out.
Yeah.
Like if you just think it's like Californians versus, and again, I don't think that. And this gentleman who I was speaking with, who said, hey, you got to understand the history of this place. It was the best, most impromptu history lesson I had ever. I could have talked to him for hours more. So it was great, and I really appreciate it. But what he was trying to do is he's like, look, you just moved here, right? And he wasn't saying it in a condescending manner. He's like, you just moved here. You need to understand a little bit more of this. And he's like, you are making to some degree public comment on what's going on. And, as such, you should be a little bit more educated, which I'm like, God, man,
awesome,
what an incredibly kind, and it's like, this dude out of nowhere spends an hour talking to me, educating me. It's like, dude, thank you. Like, this is great. But again, it's curious to me. It's like, even if there wasn't this large influx of population, things are changing here, and they started changing well before people moved in. Right. And it's interesting to hear people's different perspectives on, look, things are changing. That's just the way it goes. Things could be changing from 30, 40 years ago there was a plan, or things could be changing. There's this mass population influx because it's so great here, or, things just change.
Yeah. It's the only constant, right?
There's that. I actually...
Old Heraclitus, right?
Yeah. There's you should check this out. Google, what is it? An ode to change as it changes, or a testament to change as it changes. It's an art installation at Stanford that an old client of mine, who is this professional artist, Wild Times, made. And it's this wall. You know those turnstile things at train stations that flip around real fast to like show different times? And so he made an entire wall of these things, but they weren't with numbers, they were with colors. And so this mass wall constantly changes. It looks like there's rain coming down. It's blues and oranges, and it does these different patterns. You're like, how?
That's so cool.
Yeah, like what kind of acid were you on, man? Like, you are something else. Anyway, Dan, listen, it is almost 12:30. I think I gotta let you go, buddy. We've been at this for almost 2 hours.
Farm stuff, man. Barely.
I wanted to ask you about the berries and stuff too, because like raspberries and blackberries, how you trim them back, like whole bit.
Right. No, we could talk. We could do actually like a garden show or something where we could be a little bit more specific about it.
I would love to do that. Could we come on to the farm once things start thawing and start talking to, like, I would love to be in the greenhouse talking to you about the different
That's right,
things.
because I mean this is YouTube. So,
right.
Yeah.
We can go anywhere.
We can do that, yeah.
I'll get somebody to film us and we'll do it. I'd love to do one on the farm though, because I've been there several times. I love it.
Yeah.
Like, you got such a great little spot.
But yeah, we could talk about stuff like that, because I like to wait a little bit longer but in dormancy, and you have time and your tools are sharp, go out there and cut those berries and stuff. Yeah. That's the time to do that. I like to do it right before it wakes up, so I'll probably do it in like late January. That's when I like to do that. But maybe a little sooner, just if I have the time. Sooner. So we'll see. But I just, for the people in Dry Creek who were part of the CSA this year, like, and came out to the markets and stuff. I mean, we didn't really go through the whole year, but it was a challenging year, but it was a good year, and it was that way because of all you guys. So thanks for coming out, being a part of it.
Thanks for doing it for us. And I mean, when I would get text messages from you with stuff, I'd be like,
because you like peaches, and I was like, hey man, I don't have many this week.
So the last one, when you were like, we got these, and I lost, but I was like out of town.
You were out of town.
Yeah, I couldn't make it, and I was like, no, somebody's eating my peaches. Yeah, but all your produce is great. Like, it really is. And again, I like to cook. I'm a big fan of like the peppers. So I don't generally buy peppers for myself, but when they would come in the baskets and stuff, I'm like, oh, I'm doing something with this.
The peppers weren't even that great this year, but I mean,
I liked having it. Even if you're telling me they're going to be better next year, great. Yeah, you roast them. time I do a lot of onions and garlic and peppers in there, a little different and things like that, or like putting them on tri-tips. I do Hispanic. I do different fry-ups with beef. But what we should do? We should do like a cooking one too, where you go through some of your greatest recipes or greatest things. We'll have like Julia Child style. We'll get aprons on. It'll be fantastic.
Oh, gosh, yeah, we could do that. Well, and I got to thank. I got to thank Chris for doing the deliveries.
Oh yeah, Chris Gibbons. Shout out the legend,
man. And then Lena.
Lena.
Yeah. She did a couple of on-farm cooking classes that were just phenomenal. The last one we did, we were talking about like preserving stuff and doing like refrigerator pickling. So not the kind where you boil the water and do all the stuff, and because some people worry about like botulism and stuff. So you're just the simple, and so good and so awesome. She's such a good food communicator. So
we gotta do more of this.
We'll bring her in.
Every time I talk to you, it's like the time goes by. It's ridiculous. We gotta do more. But, we'll make it work.
But and then probably put out next year's CSA signups and end of January. So maybe we could do some then, because I kind of want to talk about it a little bit. Because I want to organically get my members to about, I had like 90, 92 or something this year. And it was just a tad too many. So I don't think I'll ever need to put anybody away, but like I do kind of want to talk about it being like if you're for the CSA, like this is for people who like
really want to eat
and
this.
Are a little more adventurous in the kitchen, because to be honest, it's a lot of work being a CSA member. Because you're getting a bag sometimes every week for a little while. You got to get through it, and you're getting stuff that maybe you don't know what to do with, and you got to figure it out. So, I think it by kind of just like framing it that way, I'll be able to kind of like organically knock it down to maybe, so I tap out about 80 or so.
Dude, I got 80.
This. So, and then the rest, like come to the markets, and I'll probably do some sort of like gift card thing too, I think, so if you want to support the farm early on, like in a CSA style, we'll do like a 10 or 15%. So like you pay $100, you actually have 110 to spend at the market, that sort of thing. And then you can feel like you're giving the farm the income at the beginning of the season when we really need it, buying seeds and I just
when your capital outlays is
paying labor before like I'm doing any markets and getting any income in. So getting that income from the CSA and those sort of things. But
but I think there's tons of opportunity here, because you talk about adventurous. If people just know kind of what to do and they don't have to research it themselves. So when you're turning out like turnips or radishes or beets or whatever, we could do, if you'd like to, we could do like short videos where we do like 2-minute cooking videos. Like this is one thing we did, or this is one thing we did. And then all you'd have to do is with your basket, if you know it's coming out, you're like, look, we're delivering next week all of these beets, right? So we could do a real quick cooking show, and then you just put a QR code in the basket with like, hey, different ideas for cooking this stuff, and then they just boom pop up right on YouTube. There it is, like Dan and Matt's radish surprise. That'd be great.
Love it, man.
God, I'm looking forward to it.
That'd be so cool.
I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate you, Dan.
Hey,
thanks for coming in, man.
Great combo again.
Great as always.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, bud. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Quick shout out to our sponsor, C² Social. C² Social is the leading expert in social media marketing and creative marketing. They have fantastic platforms. I have been a client of theirs for some time. I cannot recommend them highly enough. C² Social for all of your social media and creative marketing needs.
Can you stay